Good afternoon, class. The claim that I'm going to be responding to by my opponent is our current actions to reduce plastic population are insufficient. She explains in 3 secondary claims. 1, that plastic is harmful and counterproductive. 2, she talks about the measures that we are taking. And 3, the easy ways to combat this epidemic. I will start with the first secondary claim that plastic is harmful and counterproductive. She claims that plastic is harmful and counterproductive, and I would like to focus on the harmful part. One of her supporting reasons is that the chemicals in the plastic are very harmful, but she doesn't really give an argument on how plastic population is insufficient here. So, however, there are good plastics that we use more and more of. From the evolution of bags to using more plastics for clothes to cars, etc. Not all plastics are harmful. There are good plastics. According to caretohealthyliving.com, we use more and more every day. The first kind, PET or PETE, is used in soft drinks, water, sport drinking cups, ketchup, salad dressing bottles, etc. There is no known lead to any chemicals that are suspected in these that could cause cancer or deficiency in hormones, etc. And there is also HDPE, which is used in milk cartons, water, juice bottles, yogurt, trash, retail bags, etc. In response to her second claim that the measures that we are taking are doing, there are some faults in her research. Her claim is that we are not recycling enough in what we are doing. To back up her statement, one of her researches, she uses an article on plastic bag law from the LA Times. Well, she takes this from the opinion section of the LA Times, and this itself can be hugely biased on itself in terms of source of data. Also, there is no expertise, no author in this article. According to the NCSL, regulating bags can mitigate harmful impacts to ocean, rivers, lakes, forests, and wildlife. California became the first state to enact legislation imposing a statewide ban on single-use plastic bags, which is what she was trying to say. However, according to Kelly O'Mara, the author of KEDQ, Kelly says the number of plastic bags used went from 13 million to 8 million, and the number of plastic bags went from 37 million to 2 million. This is after several environmental agency studies in the past 2 years. In response to her secondary claim, number 3, she says that there are ways to combat this epidemic. Courtney claims that taking advantage of local recycling centers is a win-win situation. However, that may not be true in some cases. Like, what if you don't have recycling programs near you? Rinkish, an author at conserveenergyfuture.org, says high upfront capital costs. Recycling is not always cost effective. Building a new waste recycling unit takes up a lot of capital. The accompanying cost includes buying different kinds of utilities, vehicles, upgrading recycling units, waste and chemical disposals, and schooling the locals by initiating useful programs and seminars. While it is true that it is beneficial to recycle, if you do not have one near you, a newly built foundation requires a lot of money to construct, especially for taxpayers. He also says recycling sites are always unhygienic, unsafe, and unsightly. Go to any waste recycling and you will almost always stumble upon unhygienic, unhealthy, and unsightly conditions. Locations where every manner of waste is piled provides a nice ground for the formation of debris and spread of infectious diseases. The harmful chemicals from these wastes can also be dangerous, so it may not always be a win-win situation while these situations are present. There's always going to be the health risks that go into managing this waste and high costs.
Right, the basic structure of the advocate's claim is laid out. You follow that structure in the body of your speech, which is fine. You basically talk about the whether or not plastic is harmful on that first point. You suggest that there's no relationship to the amount of plastic, that it's rather just about some of the chemicals in the plastics, and then you suggest that a lot of these things have been replaced. We don't know how much they've been replaced. I don't know how much less dangerous or how less prevalent the chemicals are in these PET or PET alternatives that you mentioned. It seems like there is some information on declining use of those sorts of things, or the utilization of more of the new type. But I like I said, I don't know that that denies that it is harmful. It just suggests that it's less prevalent than it has been. I think you need to make the argument that it is less harmful, that that's what it exists for, and it has succeeded in some way. On the second point, when you're talking about the measures being insufficient, and there's also this kind of argument about, well, I guess that's on the third point. It's okay. It's reasonable, although it was a little unclear. Like, you had this piece of evidence from O'Mara that talked about how the plastic bags declined after the bans had been put into place. That sounds to me like you are in essence saying that it is working, it has had an impact, and we have less of this problem than we had before. I think that's what your intention is. I think that's why I would be using this piece of information. But you don't make that claim, you just kind of present that evidence. And this is a problem. Sometimes people read information without telling us, what inference are we supposed to draw from this information? What does this mean in the course of the argument? And I think that's sort of what's missing on this point. On the third point, it's just kind of an automatic response to the advocate's suggestion that there are ways to fix these problems, and you're suggesting that there are limitations to these solutions, that recycling doesn't necessarily work pretty well. That's an okay response. The idea that it's not necessarily a win-win, I guess I could appreciate that also. But in the long run, the biggest question is plastic, as it is being used currently, dangerous, or is this an exaggerated statement? Are we doing anything about it? Those would be the key arguments. And I think you've got an answer to whether or not we're doing anything about it in the second point. You only have part of an answer to the first part in the first point, and the third point is really not relevant for most of the issues that we're looking at here. And your answer, and it's one of the places where you developed a little bit of an argument with some information about how recycling is problematic. At the end, though, I don't know how am I supposed to weigh that in evaluating the key issues here. All right, thank you.